In 1999, I had recently come to San Francisco. I was helping my brother and roommates move into their house in the city, and I happened to pass by a pole with a flyer on it for a missing girl. That girl was Kristen Modafferi. I was curious and looked up the case. Not much later, I began working in the basement office of 1 Post Street as we transformed an old building into a Gap store. I passed by the Crocker Galleria daily, enjoying the Versace window display for the 6 months the job lasted. By then, Spinelli's, the last place Kristin worked and was last seen, had become Tully's Coffee in the same spot on the first floor. This is where my interest and curiosity in this missing persons case began. Not only were our ages close, but it is such a tragic case. In 1997, Kristen Modafferi decided to come to the Bay Area from her hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina, and lived the summer of her 18th birthday year attending a photography class at UC Berkeley. A model straight-A student, and from a loving middle-class family, the daughter of a school teacher, Deborah, her mother, and Bob, her engineer father, she was to attend the University of North Carolina on a much-coveted and hard-to-achieve scholarship based on academic merit. The young Modafferi was eager to see the world, and she had a friend from Charlotte who attended UC Berkeley that would also be taking the same photography class as her. She traveled to the Bay Area a few years earlier on a family vacation and had fallen in love with the city and the Bay Area lifestyle. She secured a room across the bay at Oakland's Lake Merritt neighborhood via a Craigslist ad in a roommate house. This area, while not the best, is close to BART, and the lake at the time it was nice, safe, and cheap enough for an up-and-coming individual. She would have been able to quickly commute to the city daily using the high-speed transit system known as BART to those who live here. On June 23, 1997, Kristin was to spend her day as she had many others since her arrival 22 days earlier, as she had secured the Spinelli's Coffee gig during the week and a gig at San Francisco Museum of Modern Art gift shop on the weekends to pay the bills for the summer so that she could attend her photography class that was to start the next day. She left the Oakland home she shared with the roommates and headed to work where she would stay until 3 p.m. After completing her shift, she was seen by others roaming around the mall with an unidentified blonde-haired girl around her age before the camera picked her up alone withdrawing money from the Wells Fargo ATM and then departing 45 minutes later. One employee who witnessed her with a blonde-haired woman did think it was odd that she was still in the building so long after a shift. As that was unusual for her, she would usually exit on to her day quickly. While at work, she had asked co-workers how to get to Ocean Beach, which was not unusual since she was new in town and Ocean Beach is a haven for tourists. No one thought anything of this, except this would be the last anyone would ever see of Kristin. Kristin's parents were the first to reach out, as they had not heard from her in days, and this was uncharacteristic of her. In those days, we had only landlines, so they were forced to leave a message at the roommate house in Oakland. Upon not getting any answer, they called again, finally reaching someone in the household who mentioned they had not seen Kristin for 3 days at that point. The roommate did not think this was unusual because she was college age. Their explanation was that she probably found a boyfriend to stay over with. This panicked her parents, who knew this would be out of character, and they flew out to the Bay Area immediately. After their arrival, her parents learned that not only had she not shown up for the photography class, she had also not picked up her paycheck. This was extremely unusual for such a normally responsible young woman. They were able to file a missing persons report shortly after arriving in the city. Since Kristin was not 18, the money was not available to search as it would have been if she were under 17. This was briefly changed with the enactment of Kristin's Law, named after her and signed by Clinton in the 90s, which sunsetted in 2005, This allowed extra funding for adult disappearances. The parents decided to stay over in the city, where they were joined by family and friends who handed out flyers like the one I had come across on the pole in Crocker, Amazon so many years ago. The police used dogs to trace her scent from the 38 Geary bus stop outside the Crocker Galleria to Land's End Beach in the Sutro Bath ruins. Her scent ended at the caves to the side of the ruins. Could she have drowned? Or gotten pulled out to sea by a rogue wave? It is possible. Anything is possible. If her scent was from a prior recent trip, why would she then ask her co-workers how to get to Land's End Beach and the Sutro Bath ruins? Wouldn't she have already known this information from a prior trip? Given this, she must have somehow been there even though no one had seen her that day. It is all very odd. What I have a hard time believing is that no one saw her in this area. No one. If you live here like I do, you would know that tourists love this area. It rates among the highest desired places to view in San Francisco, if not the most viewed place. It was this way in the 90s as well. Things have not changed, but no one saw Kristin after she left Crocker Galleria. Her parents also hired a private detective and put up a reward for information. Not much came up for a month or so. Upon police going over Kristin's rented room, a Bay Area Guardian paper was found with a friendship ad circled. The description of the ad could have been written solely on Kristin's interests alone, according to her parents. But the lead became a dead end due to the time frame. After a short period, information on ads and who placed them are apparently destroyed by the newspaper, a lucky break for someone and a not-so-lucky break for the police and family. Not much later, police received an anonymous call saying that there was a love triangle between females and that is why Kristin was killed, and presumably by the same women. The call was traced back to the best and only lead to this day, John Onuma. Onuma could be best described as a sexual sadist who had a violent past with girlfriends that allegedly included abuse, violence, and sadism. At the time, he had a girlfriend named Jill Lambeau. She had a diary that was found with missing pages according to police, in and around the date of Kristin's disappearance. When asked about the pages, she related to the police that Onuma had torn them out as they might incriminate him. There were also 2 alleged incidences after Kristin's disappearance that, if were true, would be pretty damning. Supposedly, a woman who escaped Onuma while he was in violent sadist mode said he threatened that this woman could end up dead like Kristen Modafferi. Allegedly, these were the exact words used. There was also an incident with then ex-girlfriend Jill Lambeau, who called her uncle crying one weekend, explaining that she felt so guilty for helping Onuma kill and torture Modafferi. This very well could be backed up by the diary story. Both incidents are hearsay and would not likely hold up in a court, but they are interesting in the context of the case. Another bizarre coincidence is that Kristin's co-worker, Matthew Lucchea, was the boyfriend of Jill Lambeau, briefly before she dumped him for Onuma. If there are coincidences in this case, there would not be near enough to bring charges on Onuma or Lambeau, assuming that she did help. Then there were the 4 male roommates of Modafferi. While that is not suspicious of itself, there was a strange story regarding a cash rent payment from the primary renter of their house, which was going into foreclosure. The primary renter stated that Kristin had tried to pay him in cash and that he told her to go back and get a money order. No one ever found the cash or the money order. Onuma, although not a physically enticing individual, was a persuasive and manipulative person with a string of broken relationships and frightened ex-girlfriends. Accordingly, he would place ads to meet young women for potential victims, ads like the one found in the garbage can at Kristin's place. Admittedly, he would often use young women he was manipulating to lure in other young women by gaining their trust. The theory of how this could all happen through coincidence to Kristin certainly has power. In another bizarre and unfortunate coincidence, Onuma happened to be living a few blocks from Land's End Beach at the time. In 1999, Onuma moved back to Hawaii, presumably because the situation in California was not to his liking. Was Kristin a victim of homicide? Or taken out to sea by a rogue wave at Land's End, Sutro Beach? We will likely never know. I will say that I find the Land's End Beach story, or the rogue wave theory, hard to believe. Even though the dogs traced her back to the cave area, no one saw her, and that is nearly impossible in that area, even in the 90s. The area is treacherous, though, and people fall off the rocks and drown in the riptides every so often. They are also swept out to sea often. It would make sense that a tourist would just simply not think of the terrain while wanting to get a better ocean view for their pictures. She was a photographer after all. The cave area that they traced her to also becomes flooded at high tide. Could she have drowned and somehow been pulled out to sea? At 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon in near summer and not be seen is really hard to believe. If she ventured out further onto the treacherous rocks and fell, maybe, but then the sea would have to drag her way out quickly, all without being seen, and nothing could wash back from the sea, which also seems unlikely. She basically vanished without a trace. There was a disturbing story that might hold some clues as to how this could happen to young Kristin. She had gone to a concert shortly after arriving in the Bay Area. She could not secure a ride back to the city, so a random guy she met at the concert drove her to his apartment and let her stay on his couch until morning. This indicates a very trustful nature, and in a city like this means danger. This would be the type of nature a guy like John Onuma would be able to quickly manipulate and control. I do believe that the blonde-haired girl knows something, and I can't understand why she would not come forward to help with the case unless she had something to hide. So I am sure this woman plays a big role in what happened, and definitely knows what happened. To this day, the police do not have enough evidence to charge Onuma, even though he remains the strongest suspect to date, and even though Onuma moved out of San Francisco a few years after Kristin's disappearance, scandal has followed him ever since. Long after Kristin's disappearance, another private investigator volunteered to join the search for her. With fresh eyes, they were able to uncover many facts that had missed the Oakland PD. One such fact that was extremely important is that in those days, 278 Jane Avenue in Oakland was a fully operational juvenile halfway house. Since the property was right next door to Kristin's shared home at 274 Jane Avenue, could she have fallen victim to foul play from one of its residents? If you look at this home on Google, it has a lot of foliage and a potentially dark carport between the homes. In 2017, a scent dog was used to detect potential human bone fragments. This dog led the investigator to the basement at 274 Jane Avenue, where blood was detected on a cement slab that tested positive for Kristin's parents' DNA. This dog also indicated that there might be a potential burial in the basement. Further tests were necessary, but were never done, and to this day the case remains cold. As of the creation of this video, it has been 26 years since the disappearance of Kristen Modafferi. What could have happened to her? Was she the victim of a tragic accident at Ocean Beach? Did she fall victim to John Onuma? Or is it possible a resident at the next-door halfway house abducted her? Sadly, we still do not know. We do need to keep her memory alive, though, in the hope that someone, somewhere out there, might still know something and maybe see a program like this one and come forward and bring peace to her grieving family. May God be with you, Kristin, wherever you may be.